Welcome to Chasing the Upside, conversations about living the FPL life. Your best mate for FPL, Dan, welcome to Chasing the Upside. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really well. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time out to speak to me. Looking forward to the conversation that we're going to have. And talking to that conversation, I'm going to start where we always start. Your origin story for FPL. Where did it start for you?
Oh, okay. We're going back a few years now. I think it must have been 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I joined FPL Twitter as I was there. Are we calling it FPL X yet? I'm not sure. It's a
Who
bit
knows?
ambiguous at the moment, isn't it? But yeah, I joined because I was into FPL. I was watching I think a couple of FPL content creators at the time. I found there was a Twitter community. I was like, oh, brilliant. Let's get stuck into that. And then soon after, I think it was probably around January. And this was the COVID season, by the way. If you remember the famous COVID season, I decided to create a YouTube account because I just finished basically a previous YouTube channel. I wasn't really enjoying the stuff I was making on an old YouTube channel. So I sort of thought, right, what do I enjoy? I enjoy FPL. I'm now involved a little bit in the FPL Twitter community. Can we make some FPL videos? There's not too much out there at the moment. And yeah, just got stuck in basically and started making some videos around 4 years ago.
And when you first started making those first videos, what was the aim? Did you just want a couple of hundred views? Did you want, or did you have a target of subscribers? Because I presume at the time when you were starting it, you didn't think, well, in 4 years, 4 or 5 years, I'm going to be making a living out of this. So yeah,
Mm.
what were the targets early on?
Well, I think, to be honest, at the time, and I don't, this might sound a little bit mean, but I don't think it is really. But I think the standard was a lot lower four
Mm,
years ago.
mm.
Now it's amazing. There's so many brilliant content creators doing amazing stuff. But genuinely, the standard back then was not that high. So I did go into it a little bit thinking, okay, I've gathered these. I mean, I've been making YouTube videos for probably 15 years, maybe even more. So I kind of came in with a little bit of a skill set. I thought, maybe we can make a bit of pocket money here, a little bit, side hustle, as people like to say these days, a bit of supplementary income. It was always a hope that maybe one day we would be able to do 100,000 subscribers, but back then that wasn't really a thing. There wasn't really too many FPL content creators, with that sort of size of audience. So yeah, I don't think anyone really predicted what FPL content creation would become as it is today. But yeah, certainly I thought I could do a little something, maybe not this.
That's fascinating. The fact that because so often when you see people that you deem to be successful, yes, obviously your channel's been around for years. That's not too, that's not too long, of course. But then when you put into context that you've actually been sort of making videos for 10, 15 years, it's that thing, isn't it? It's that there's sort of the iceberg analogy.
Yeah, there's that phrase that behind every instant success is sort of 10 years of no success, isn't there? That's how it
Absolutely.
works.
So talking of success, if we go back to, I think it was 2 seasons ago, where you came 243rd in the world, which is completely outrageous. So reflecting on that season, were there things that you can pinpoint why that season was so good?
I think uh it's the reasons why that season went well would be the same reasons why the season after that didn't go so well, and that's I think just the willingness to go against the template, if you like, a little bit, and try and go a little bit different and get yourself ahead nice and early when a lot of your calls turn out to be right. But when you are going against the template and you are trying to play a bit differently, just as much as things will go right for you, they'll also go wrong for you. That season, we got a lot of luck along the way, which was fantastic. But that's not always the case. I don't think there really is one sort of get rich quick scheme to doing well in FPL. But a willingness to be different is the difference between a player who can consistently finish top 50k and a person who might finish 100k 100k 1000th, then 250k and then maybe back into the top 1,000 again.
Yeah, okay. So you mentioned the season after as well, which I think started badly, but then actually ended up a reasonable rank in the end of the
Yes.
season. Um, so I'm interested into sort of your strategy about, because if you've gone from this incredible rank to where everything was going right, you know, confidence is high, to potentially those 50-50 calls completely not working, and
Mm,
then you're having to rethink. So I suppose, did you learn more from last season, where you were sort of, well, you were second guessing yourself, I suppose.
yes, I definitely think at the start of that season after, I perhaps kind of pushed a little bit too far on trying to go different. You know, going without Erling Haaland, going, picking. I can't remember who it was. I think everyone was going for maybe Diaz or Jota or someone, and I decided I'll go for Robertson instead. And I thought of these. What you usually you would go for maybe one or two, maybe three differentials in your team, but I was going, all right, let's just do five. And when all five of them don't work out, yeah, it's time for some tears, really.
But what does interest me with you in your position too is that if you know, if you're me, for instance, if you want to
Hmm.
do five differentials or want to completely come away from the template, you know, if it goes well, brilliant. But if it doesn't, also kind of brilliant, because you got to play your own game. But whereas in so many people follow you in terms of potentially even copy you as well, which obviously happens.
Hmm.
So there's a bit of an influence there. So when you're making decisions about your team, is it just your team are you thinking, or is there someone, you know, is there that little voice on your right shoulder going, well, you know, if this goes wrong, have you thought of the consequences?
Yeah, we have had some angry messages in the past. I can't believe you told me to pick him.
Told
Uh,
me, like you told me, yeah.
that's part of it, though. That's part of content creation, really. But no, but the way I get around that is just to put a big disclaimer. Well, say in every video or as often as I can, this is my team. I play a very, very risky game of FPL. I mean, once you finish 243rd, like you can finish like, I could finish like 30, 40K every year for the next 10 years, but I'd never get that adrenaline, that kick of getting to those points. So I'm not suddenly going to start playing in a template way. So yeah, it's very important that I do say, please, people, do not follow me down a rabbit hole, a path that you're not, if you're not willing to take a risk. If you're just looking for a consistent rank, I've got loads of other videos on my channel. Go watch those ones. This team is mine and mine alone. If you want to take that risk, you're doing that at your own peril, I guess.
That's a good, yeah. Having said that, like you said, even with that disclaimer, if you said it even every other sentence, I'm sure you'd get some
Yep.
people coming out of the woodwork. Yeah, yeah.
That's exactly right.
Have you always played FPL like over the 4 or 5 years you've been playing in that way? I mean, because if I'm thinking about when I first realized there was sort of the X slash Twitter community, it kind and this isn't a bad way because this is how I sort of like to play, but it kind of pushes you down the template route in some ways.
Mm.
So, and you were saying that you know, you acknowledged and you saw this community. So did it do the same thing for you? Were you pushed down the template route, or had you were you always reasonably good at saying, no, I'm going to play my own game, I'm going to make my own decisions?
I think a bit of both. I think naturally when you first enter into um in the FPL community, I guess there is I know and people don't often say it, but I think there is a certain, right way of playing, if you like, that is kind of permeates a little bit throughout the community. So obviously that's going to have a little bit of influence on you, no matter who you are. And I'm sure a lot of people, first join this world and then are like, oh, okay, these are the right players to play, to pick and play with. But I mean, to be honest, I think there's one manager I came across, and I'm sure you've most people know of him, and that's Late Riser, um, who I follow pretty religiously. as an FPL manager who just does do things differently, and he has fun, and he enjoys it. And I think for all of the FPL content and ways of playing out there, that one sort of resonated with me the most, and it was exciting and it was fun, and it was, chasing the upside. What is the best that could happen? Let's hope for that. And yeah, I think that's, to me personally, a more enjoyable way of playing FPL. And I think that's where everyone's got to get to eventually. If you're going to play FPL in the long term, you've got to play it in a way that you enjoy. And for some people, it's going to be playing a little bit safer, being reliable, having that consistency. For other people, it's that do or die, full risk, and a lot of people somewhere in between. So yeah, I think the FPL community might help you find the way to play FPL for you.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah. Yeah. Because there's so, I mean, weirdly, well, not weirdly, because he's very popular, but I think you're third person to kind of quote Late Riser. So he's very sort of influential within sort of content creators and the way he plays the game, because he's quite aggressive. But he's not, I wouldn't say, he's silly with his moves, because I don't think you can be that silly and have the ranks that he's had. So yeah, I think he's quite influential.
Yeah, I think it's kind of that the smart risk taking is, if you can justify it, you can think of a set of reasons why you're going for this pick rather than someone else. I think it's absolutely fine to play that way. I think a lot of people appreciate that as well.
Do bad game weeks, affect you badly, or are you quite good at shrugging it off?
Yeah, usually I don't know, like for a few hours,
Okay.
like yeah, it does put me in a foul mood, to be honest. And at that point, sort of turn off social media, stop thinking about it, watch some TV, go play some Xbox, or whatever. Just try and tune myself out of it. But then you go again, don't you? And that's the joy of FPL, is every week feels unique and like a new experience in many ways. It is essentially one game that lasts, most of a year, but the way it's sort of broken down, it often feels like, oh, fresh start every week, which is kind of nice in a way.
Yeah, I think that's the really nice way to look at it, isn't it? Is that once that Sunday or Monday is gone, you get it's a reset then. And I think that's a really nice way to look at. There was I've got an episode coming out shortly, and I interviewed Leon, who is the running pharmacist on Twitter,
Oh yeah.
and he's really quite philosophical about the game, and he said that the way he looks at it, which I love, the way he looks at it is, as soon as the deadline is over, that is the game week over. Like, that's all you can control, and so he kind of just switches off then. So whatever
Hmm.
happens then, it's over. So, and then he just looks forward to the next, which I really, well, I'm trying to take on myself,
Yeah.
but it's pretty difficult. But I don't know if you've got any thoughts about that.
That's a really interesting point, but I think it's difficult to switch off until the last game has been played, isn't it? It
Absolutely.
really, really is. Especially when you kind of want to watch all the football and enjoy all the football. I don't know. I don't know how you feel about this one, but when you're watching everything unfold in real time, it's difficult to say no, no. I've already made the decisions. It's done now. I mean, people these days. I mean, we've got Twitter leaks of early team news, or for like the evening game on the Sunday. There's nothing we can do with that information at all, is there? But we love it. We love it because we're the game week is in full flow. So
Yeah.
maybe that's in contradiction to Leon's point. I don't know. What do you think about that one?
Well, I like the thought of having that separation, but
Mm.
I'm going to go back to, just because it's fresh. We're recording this on the 2nd of January, and it's a day after the night before that Salah had the weird. It was Liverpool versus Newcastle, and I don't know. It was just a really odd game, and because of where it was situated in the game week as well, there was a lot of eyeballs on it, and there was a huge amount of ranks riding on this because it was a split captaincy, um, and I had Trent, I had Darwin, don't talk about Darwin, but also Salah. And if anybody watched that game, it was such an odd game in terms of there was so many there was like point dodging all over the shop. Salah missed a penalty, and I felt myself sort of coming back to this. Right, well, I can't control this. I'm just going to enjoy the game, but I bloody couldn't. I just couldn't do it. And then the second half went completely ballistic, and it was fine in it. But that is sort of FPL in a nutshell, isn't it? Really.
Mm.
So what do you think your just sort of focusing on the strategy just for the time being? What do you think your biggest strength um, and your biggest weakness as an FPL manager is?
Hmm. I think I'm quite good at I guess I don't even know if it's really a strength, but having the confidence to go against the template. I know a lot of people do struggle with that when they really want to make moves, but feel perhaps they can't. So I do think that is a strength. Um, as for weakness, perhaps it's the same thing. Maybe no overconfidence in going differential, or perhaps even the opposite, and kind of misidentifying when a template pick is actually a really, really good pick. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I mean, I'd never bought Dom Solanke this season, for example. He was a brilliant pick. He was a template pick, but he was a brilliant pick. And I just sort of, I recognized, yeah, he's a decent pick, but I didn't really recognize how good of a pick he was. And there's no luck in the fact that Solanke's done well. And that was I overlooked that one, which I think is sometimes a weakness. So too focused on the differentials that I missed the obvious ones.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, Dom Slanky is a weird one because I felt exactly the same. I just thought it was a sort of a bandwagon, and I was going on his past stats, and I just thought he was an okay, but is he justifiable of all this? And he's just completely, yeah. I mean, he was he's been playing so well. So yeah, that is
Mm.
an interesting. Your strength is your weakness potentially. Yeah. But then I think going back to the very start of the conversation where you were saying that in order to get 243rd in the world, you need that attitude because you need the that boom or bust decision making. Otherwise, you're just going to hover around maybe 100k to 500k if you're just so balanced all the time.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, interesting. Do you think there's mistakes that you make over and over again that you say to yourself, right, that is the last time. That is the last time that I do this. And then the next game week comes along, and then then you kind of fall into that trap again. Is that something that you suffer from?
Yeah, maybe differential captains
Okay.
a little bit. Yeah, but I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get better at that one. We're all trying to get better, aren't we? But yeah, there's something about a differential captain that is just that. Maybe it's like chasing a high, really,
Yeah.
of when that hits. But no,
Yeah.
yeah, do that occasionally and more often than not, regret it. Particularly if the differential captain's name is Oliver Watkins. But we'll leave that one.
We'll leave Oliver. We'll leave Oliver alone for now. So sort of switching gears slightly to sort of social media, I suppose, because I think that when managers become engaged, I think the X slash Twitter community is quite prevalent actually, and that's how people sometimes do become engaged. And obviously, you're heavily because of the nature of your job, you need to be on social media. And I think that from an outsider looking in, it can be a very positive place, but it can also be quite a toxic place as well. Um, what's your experience over the year? Well, has it changed over the years? And how do you deal with that? Because I think it's an interesting, well, to get your opinion on it is it's because of who you are. I think that would be really interesting.
Hmm. I would honestly say that I guess my social media experience since the FPL stuff has probably been mostly negative, to be
Okay.
honest.
Okay.
It's yeah, I often just take a break or just like turn it off because a lot of the times I don't actually find it that enjoyable. I think the people, there's a lot of idiots out there. We know that,
Yeah.
and Twitter does seem to be a breeding ground for it. And particularly when you do have a lot of followers, you could have 99% of people enjoying your content, laughing at your jokes, whatever. But it only needs to be a vocal 1%. And if you scale that up to bigger numbers, that vocal 1% becomes 10 people, 20 people, and more and more. So yeah, I think especially at the beginning of when I was doing FPL stuff, my channel kind of rose to prominence fairly quickly. Target was put on my back quite early. I think because of that, because obviously we've when I first came in, there was people doing FPL content for years and years and years. Really working hard at it. I mean, they were really experienced managers, which I'm not. I've only really been playing FPL seriously for 4 or 5 years. Who's this guy? Where did he come from? Why is he getting the views and stuff? And I think from that there was a lot of accusations, a lot of rumors. He's been buying all of his followers and subscribers. He's using some kind of cheats or something like that to get ahead in the game, or all kinds of rumors. Like, I mean, a rumor that still persists to this day is that that I'm a racist, for example,
Right.
which is quite ironic given the fact that my father is black. I'm a mixed race.
Right.
But the problem with social media is that these, once it's said, for a lot of people it becomes fact. No one does, you don't do research, and particularly, if you've already got a certain bias against someone, anything negative you hear, you will naturally believe, and anything positive you hear about a person, you'll naturally disbelieve. But I think that is just part of being, in the limelight a little bit. And I think the last few years has kind of been a bit of a journey for me in many ways, of just kind of, this is just how it happens. If I think it's bad for me, think of like footballers and all of the abuse and stuff they have on social media for doing their job, doing barely anything wrong. It's horrendous, but that's unfortunately just the world we live in right now. And as people on social media, we do need to take a step back and try and, I guess, disassociate a little bit, maybe,
Mm.
from a lot of things that happen on there.
Easier said than done, though, I presume.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but I suppose the counter to that is, if social media is used as a platform, you're always going to get the idiots, aren't you? I
Yeah.
suppose. But it must, yeah. I mean, I always think it must be incredibly difficult getting abuse for essentially doing your job, and putting out opinions about FPL, because however much we love FPL, it is a game, isn't it? And no one should have that kind of abuse. So is what is really what I sort of took from that also is people potentially at the beginning saying, who is this person? He's come from nowhere, and then it goes back to all the way back to the start of the conversation where you've been making videos, not on FPL, but making videos and learning the game, learning your
Yeah.
craft for 10 or 15 years.
Mm,
Which yeah, I mean, obviously that doesn't end up in a tweet, does it?
no. No, but I think by now I'm sort of a little bit part of the furniture
Yeah.
in the FPL, and there's actually loads of new content creators coming through, yourself included, that obviously smashing it and doing very well. And yeah, it's grown, and everything's amazing. There's new people popping up all the time. There's new content, new ideas. I mean, this is a new idea I've not seen before. That you're doing right now, which I think
Mm.
is brilliant. So yeah, I do love the community. I do love the content. Um, it's sometimes the Twitter notifications do need to be turned off though.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, because it's not worth your health, is it? That's the
Mm.
thing. Yeah, okay. Well, thank you for that. Well, thank you for your honesty as well. I mean, as we said at the very start of that question, there's good people, there's bad people, and it's just as much, I suppose, you need to cut yourself off from a bad game, but you need to kind of cut yourself mentally from those people as well.
Mm.
Um, yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, thank you, Dan. We're on to the final three questions now that I'm
Cool.
going to ask all guests. So the first one being, what has FPL taught you about life?
Yeah, when you sent me this question, I thought, oh, that's quite. Is there a deeper meaning to FPL? And I'm not sure I could really think of one. One thing that I would say though is that FPL opens you up to a world of football and people that you wouldn't have expected. FPL managers, we're watching, Burnley versus Sheffield United on a Monday evening. You would have never done that before. And often you see things in football, you watch games that you really enjoy that you never thought you would. I mean, last season, I watched every Brighton game throughout the season, and it was brilliant. Brighton was such an enjoyable football team to watch last year, and I would have never done that without FPL. So it's opened up a whole new world of football games, football matches, football players that I never thought was there before. And I guess the other thing is the people that you meet along the way, and the friends that you make. All because these days, you know, most people play FPL within a certain age range or demographic. You're going to have something in common with everyone, and I think, well, not everyone, but a lot of people, which is so nice to just have in a world where it's so divided on so many things to actually have something in common. So that's sort of the best answer I could come up with that one. I'd be interested. What's your best answer to that question you've had
Oh,
before?
blimey. Well, firstly, it's certainly not a loaded question.
Hmm.
And some people have gone quite philosophical about it, about maybe the skills that they've learned through FPL, like decision making or long-term strategy and all those things. And then some people like simply will talk about the community and how, and like you just said, um, simple things like adding a layer of interest to football. Because on a Monday night where it's Nottingham Forest versus Wolves, no offense to Forest and Wolves fans, it's not a high class game potentially.
Hmm.
But yeah, if you've got one or two players in there, it's box office stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's certainly not a loaded question, and it's a very wide question because I want people to say what they sort of really think, really. So yeah, the people and adding interest to a sport you love, that sounds pretty good to me. So thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Just before the final two questions, in terms of adding a layer of interest and FPL and your relationship with FPL, have you got targets for where you want to take the channel, or is it always going to be within FPL? Is it going to be in content creation in sort of general? Where does the future, or what does the future look like?
Mm, I mean, I've always been fairly honest about this one. That my first passion is content creation,
Mm,
not FPL.
yeah.
So yeah, I think I for as long as I can remember, since I was like a little kid, I've always been making content, and that's not going to stop if this channel stops. But yeah, I mean, I know it sounds strange, but I'm not actually that interested in growing the YouTube channel. I feel so fortunate to be in the position I am right now that if someone offered me, okay, your channel could go to the millions for the next, in the next 5 years, or you could do this for the rest of your life at the level you're doing it. I take the to do this for the rest of my life 100% of the time. So as I've just the goal is to keep going. That's yeah, pretty much it. We'll see how long we can do that for.
Excellent. Okay, so what is your favorite FPL moment of all time? What is your champagne moment?
Um, there's a couple I can think of. I mean, there was a season, I think it was about 5 seasons ago. This was before I was on YouTube. And it was a week in which Michael Antonio, scored a hat trick against Nottingham Forest. In fact, no, it wasn't. It was during the COVID season, I believe, towards the end when the games were being played over the summer. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
West Ham were playing against Norwich, and I thought, you know what, Antonio was like 0.5% owned. I thought, I fancy this one. I like the look of his numbers. I like the fixture. Let's bring him in and let's see what we can do there. I think I captained him as well, and boom, there we go. That was a very, very fun moment in FPL. Very, very enjoyable. Um, but look, there's been a few moments. I mean, going to the big FPL meetups every year, Fantasy Football Fest. Those have been some great FPL memories, or FPL related memories, I guess. The Football Content Awards I went to a couple of months ago. That was brilliant. But I think the one that tops it off really has to be that season where the rank was really good.
Yeah,
It was such good fun.
I'm
Um,
I'm surprised you don't have next to your shirts or next to your YouTube trophy, a nice plaque or framed print of Antonio there. That'd be good, wouldn't
oh yeah, that would be very good. Yeah, yeah. Perhaps I should do something like that. Yeah,
it? Yeah, well, there you go. There you go. I'll know if I'm watching one of your videos and Antonio's there. I'll say I know where that comes
yeah.
from. Good stuff. Thank you. Well, just quickly before we go on to the best piece of advice, you mentioned numbers and data. And how much weight do you give to the data, or are you very much an eye test manager?
I think we'll both really, because data does miss a lot of things, but I think why the way I usually would go do it is I look for the data to get some general ideas, and then use the eye test to sort of narrow that down a little bit more. Um, but yeah, I think data is really, really important for trying to identify players, because how many players are there in the Premier League? You can't sift through all of them, so you need to create a short list somehow, and the data does that job pretty well. So yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I say on that.
that makes sense. Brilliant. Okay. Well, just before the last question, a final thank you from me. Huge thank you for taking the time out. I've had a lovely conversation. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me on. I do. It's always nice to have a chat, and yeah, I mean, experience new YouTube channels. I mean, I'd not seen your stuff before, and now I have. So I've got a new YouTube channel on the subscribe list, which is
Well,
always nice as well.
that's very good of you to hear. You hadn't heard of me, not many people have, so don't But yeah, what is the best piece of FPL advice you've ever been given?
I think was probably the hardest question of them all. I don't I don't know. I think I would just go back to you know late risers philosophy of playing FPL. I think is for me the best thing that I've heard that has helped me enjoy FPL. I think any advice that pertains to enjoyment of FPL is always the best advice. If you're not having fun with it, then I mean, I've seen people say, if you're putting hours into this every week and you're not enjoying it, then it's okay to stop putting so much time in it, and just maybe just spending a few minutes each week until you find your joy and your passion. Because yeah, it's a game and it's meant to be fun. And I think yeah, the best advice I've heard is always relating to make sure you keep it fun and you're enjoying FPL.
That's great advice. That's awesome. But I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's the most triggering thing about FPL is that the time that you give FPL doesn't equate to your improvement like
Yeah.
straight away. And there's so little that you do control. And also, I think there's so obviously not around the Christmas period, but generally speaking, you have a bad game week. You have a lot of time to think about it
Yeah.
before the next one. So there's all these
Mm.
things that mentally sort of can turn you in knots, can't they? So
Mm.
yeah, brilliant. All right, Dan. Well, thank you for joining me today on Chasing Upside. I've had a blast. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me on once again. And yeah, looking forward to seeing this go out live. Hopefully, people will enjoy this episode.